from the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
As many of you realize, there is a technological revolution that's going on concerning how we deliver education, particularly at the higher education level. Because of computers and satellites and changing in communication systems, we can deliver programs and courses at great distance, particularly to rural areas where individuals find it difficult to come to a main campus. So the topic for today's program is called Distance Education. We're going to give special emphasis and recognition to North Idaho College's program in this field, but I want to make it clear that there are many universities and colleges, not only throughout the United States, but around the world, that are becoming very much involved in this process. But in order to carry out our goal for today, I'm so pleased to welcome three of my colleagues from North Idaho College to our program. I first welcome Candace Wheeler, who is the Director of Distance Education. And Candace, you were instrumental in bringing this program together. I thank you. And I also, before our viewers, want to welcome you to our program with our college. You're a new employee, and everything I see about you is extremely impressive. So you'll be a great addition to this topic and this program at our institution.
Thank you very much.
And next to her is Scott Peterson, who is the admissions specialist at North Idaho College. And Scott, again, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the program. And you do a lot of things for this institution, not only in the field of admissions, but you've also been very helpful in our lecture series, and we are deeply grateful to you for that. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Tony.
And our third guest is Karen Streeter, who is the registrar of our institution, and she does a remarkable job. And Karen, you're so open to new technology, and you have created some additions that's so helpful to our students. And I also thank you for being a major part of our lecture series and doing our Chautauqua performances, as you've role-played a number of famous people in history. And again, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tony.
I'd like to start the program with you, Candace, if I may. And as I indicated in the introduction, it is about distance education. You had a title that I really like that could apply to any institution, not only ours, but you said North Idaho College is going the distance so you don't have to. And I think that is a great way to open up our discussion. And therefore, my first question to you would be, really, what is distance education for those who are now being introduced to it for the first time?
Well, actually, distance education has been around for quite some time. NIC has a tradition where they have been putting real live instructors at a distant site from campus to instruct students. And I'm sure there's many people in the audience who have gone to a high school and gotten classes. It has evolved because of technology. Your program that we're having right now is accessing information and learning to many, many people throughout the 5 northern counties and beyond, using technology and getting access at a distance from NIC's campus. But the technology recently has changed the way we are as instructors radically. Internet is one of the ways that we can provide access to instruction. And in that mode, a student anywhere in the 5 northern counties, at their home, in their office, wherever, they have access to a computer and access to a phone line, can then get to a website on NIC's campus. The course is designed by our instructors and reviewed, but their tests, their assignments, everything is done through the internet, and they don't physically have to come on campus.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
That's your responsibility, if I know it counts, but are we not also correct to say that college universities, not only in this country but around the world, are also offering courses, and you can go to their site, and of course you have to register for the course to get credit now. So it's not even going to have boundary limits in the future, is it?
The whole geographic, and you mentioned the change for providing access, not worrying about geography for our rural students and whatnot. It goes both ways. When we are delivering a course on internet, we have no idea where that student is going to say, can I take this class? Right now, through the registration and whatnot, we do know the addresses, and we are concentrating on the 5 northern counties, but there are no boundaries on the internet. Anyone could ask to be a part of that class and register and get a password.
And then there's a communication between the student and the instructor through this internet process.
All of the classes that NIC is offering presently has a chat room where when you're on this system, let's say it's a literature class, a topic will be posed by the instructor, and all the students will interact and say, all right, this is the theme, or talk about this problem that's put forth. All the students can respond and see and edit and whatnot each other's response. So it is like chatting. The beauty, I feel personally, of the internet is when you're in one of those chat rooms, the quiet voice is just as strong as the real vocal, bold students. So everyone is at an equal playing field. And internet to me is also very interesting because you have to have very good reflective writing skills, because that's your only form of communication.
And you can go at different paces, can you not?
Yes.
Students, depending on what your schedule is.
It's completely flexible. When 2 o'clock in the morning in your jammies, you can be chatting away about Socrates.
So it's not always at 9 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
That's right. And that's the convenience of going the distance this way. Yes.
You're so articulate in explaining how that works. Another term that we use and another program that we have at around the country and at this institution too is called interactive video conferencing, and also courses. Students can be involved with that. Explain to the audience what that is.
This is really a unique opportunity that NIC, though many other institutions have a similar system, we were fortunate enough to get a very large federal grant, and we are connected now by this conferencing method to 10 area high schools and 5 hospitals. What this is like is just as we are in a broadcast situation now, but it is really one way. The audience of your program can see you, they can hear us, but they can't really interact. The interact video part is the students at a distance can also ask me a question if they wanted to. I would hear their question and it would go back and forth. Coming this spring, there'll be several of these courses, and if I can use a class that Tony, you, I believe, are going to be offering one of the courses. You would be in a studio similar to this, except there would be behind you a large TV screen where, if I were the student, I could see the students, say in Kellogg or Plummer or any of the area high schools. Behind my shoulder, you would be seeing the classroom and those students. So everybody can see everyone. Everyone can raise their hand, ask a question real time. But the marvelous part of this, as I mentioned, you're planning to teach one of these classes. The value and the robustness and the quality and the instruction that you are bringing on campus can now, through this technology, be shared at a distance. And again, that geographic barrier is eliminated. And that's a very big deal in northern Idaho.
Let me, and we'll bring our other 2 guests in a little bit because they have a special area they're going to talk about. We're getting through these technological questions about classes. I taught what is called a telemedia course already for Lewis Clark State College and North Idaho College. In that case, there's only 2 sites. The students are housed in a studio in Lewis Clark State College in Lewiston, right, and then the students here. Of course, again, everyone can see everyone, and there's screens, and there's microphones, and they're at tables and so forth. But what I found from that process, and I'd like to get you to react to it, is that if one is not careful as a faculty member, you get very consumed with the discussions going on in your studio, and it's terribly important to recognize and to use certain techniques to bring the students in that are at a distance. And what advice would you have for future faculty that would be having students at those sites?
Well, one of the real joys of working at NIC is there's been some real good reflective planning before we went into these endeavors. And one was to identify and get some grant money from the state for faculty training. And we have contracted out through the University of Idaho because we really don't have a college of education. That is not our role and mission. But why reinvent the wheel? Maximize and use the strengths of our sister institution that's on campus also. So there's a program that is instituted right now that anyone, before they go on any of these new systems and ways, does have the training. And so there is a strategies and techniques how to maximize being in two different sites. And be sure to bring in the older, place-bound wealth of information at a distance to your campus environment. And that there is a training and a technique. My recommendation is to always be sure to have that training before you go at a distance.
Great advice. In relation to this interacting, not only across county boundaries and state boundaries, but even internationally, I believe you have a story you'd like to tell us about a recent experiment with people in New Zealand.
Well, you mentioned the class that you had taught at LCSC, and that's Pointtopoint, and that is a system through the microwave. The system that I'm talking about right now, where we connect to the high schools, is much more flexible because it uses a dial-in system that is industry standard. Again, good reflective thought on NIC to put in this kind of a system. The high schools that we're connected to can also connect to each other and share curriculum. And one of the little fourth grade classrooms at Clark Fork, you mentioned Clark Fork, had pen pals, but of course they were using email. They're kids of the 90s. And one little child, I guess, said, well, we don't have just email. We can do video conferencing. And the New Zealand child came right back talking about how globally this is. We have it too. So they were going back and forth, back and forth. The teachers got involved and they said, wouldn't it be interesting if we could communicate online? Now we're talking Clark Fork in New Zealand. There was also a lot of talking and exchange of culturally. What do you do during your day? Fishing. Well, I caught a bigger fish. I mean, these are fourth graders, so all this. We got a phone call at NIC asking us to do a test run to see if we could communicate with New Zealand. Worked like a charm. The next day, after much math and much geography searching and much, the children really worked hard, they dialed up New Zealand and talked for over an hour. They could see and ask and whatnot. And sure enough, the New Zealand child brought in a snapshot that they could put on the camera of his big fish, and they all voted yes, that was a bigger fish than the Idaho student had got. But anyway, it's that kind of...
It escalates learning.
Just phenomenal.
It sounds like to me that with young children in particular, it creates such enjoyment and excitement, and therefore you don't have to do a lot of persuading. The learning just happens. And
it's also the relevancy. All of a sudden, to know the different time zones, there's a reason for that. Geography, there's a reason for that. It just is a marvelous exposure, but it's so different.
It also teaches understanding and tolerance and appreciation.
Yes, connectedness.
Connectedness, it's a great word to use. We're going to go to the support service in a moment, but may I just use a general term with you, technology. What else should we put in the mix that we have not been addressing?
I believe it's very hard to predict, but we are talking a lot of the technology, and the technology is fascinating, but really how we will be successful is focusing on that student. And I think that's why it's so important now in distance education, because the students need access to learning now more than any other time. And in my generation, when we were going to school, you did go to a campus, and we will always have that, where you go to a campus and get instruction. But now society is demanding that we're constantly learning, because the job is changing so for everyone, whether you're a nurse practitioner or whatever. When that is happening, those students in society are going to drive what we're going to have in technology. I think we're going to be combining internet with video. We are going to have more real-time exchanges with cameras on top of our computers. We will just be doing more and more. But whatever that student needs out there to be successful is what's going to drive what NIC would do. And I know you mentioned that we were going to talk to the other panelists. Maybe this would be a good time to say how the focus is, when you focus on the student to be successful, we usually talk just about the faculty, the curriculum, and the student, but none of that really comes together without that support service people. That on campus, we have advising, registrar, bookstore, library. All those things have to be out at a distance also. And
that requires a large team.
Yes, it's
Let's do that, and I'm going to come back to you. There's
Okay.
something I want to deal with about conferencing too, for major national, international conferences. But Scott Peterson, we introduced you earlier as a member of our team, and and dealing with admissions. I wish you would follow up on what Ken's talking about. How are you using and how are you going to use in the future this technology to create an easier process for the admissions if some students cannot come actually to this campus?
Well, we're extremely excited that Candace is here and this technology, and it hadn't been really brought up earlier, but I wish everybody could see the actual, I hope nobody's picturing a 13-inch black and white television when they're thinking of this new technology. Yeah. But to be able to actually extend North Idaho colleges and to lower some boundaries and to reach some of the 5 northern counties and be able to offer classes now to parents and students in Bonners Ferry and Clark Fork and whatnot, for us it's just seems to be a natural thing to do. As far as what the admissions office, how we currently use it, is we're now able to actually give seminars in each of those outlying areas where that if maybe a group of parents has questions of where they're sending their children to school or whatnot, we can actually get them together in the high school and we can walk across the hall from our office and sit down with those parents and in some sort of, in essence, have a one-to-one conversation with them via the technology that we now have, and rather than them having to take a day off work, commute down to North.
And it's January, middle of January, and
Correct.
There's a snowstorm and they can't get here, and therefore you go to them via this technology.
Right, and as far as the ease of being able to use this, once the class schedules are out and whatnot, basically the students need to fill out an application for admission, which they can actually have faxed to them or be faxed down to us. And so we're really trying to get to the point where a student would never have to leave Clark Fork to go through this complete process in order to make them, it's kind of like building a campus for the residents of Clark Fork, Bonners Ferry, and the outlying areas.
The fact that they are doing this at a center, Candace has talked about a lot of different centers, and you'll set up a time, I assume, an appointment, they'll be all at that center, maybe several parents, students. But I'm futurist oriented, and so in the future it may not even be that. And from each home they may, exactly. I know it's harder one-on-one for time constraints, but I'm sure those centers will continue to exist, but there'll be a lot more just from the home, will they not? Because most of the homes now are getting computers, and you're talking about the camera on the computer, so they're going to be able to visualize what's going on in YouTube.
Yeah, we would be able to link, I did mention maybe a group of parents in Bonners Ferry, but there could be one parent in Bonners Ferry, one in St. Mary's, one in Clark Fork, and together you basically have a group that is completely interacting with each other from all over the 5 northern counties of Idaho. So it's really an amazing technology that we're really excited about having it.
Karen, you've been a friend a long time, and I've always admired your ability to conduct the registrar's office with such efficiency. And I want to add a footnote that some members don't know that you're also a member of the City Council in Post Falls, so you have a lot of different ways that you not only serve this community, but you also use that technology. Post Falls is using a lot of it too. I've seen some things they're doing that you've been instrumental in that also. But share with us some of the changes that you've brought about in the registrar's office using this technology to serve students. Now, Scott's done a very successful job, and they want to come here. The admissions process has worked, but then there is that task of not only registering for courses, but also making sure over a period of time that you have all the general education requirements and so forth. And how do you do that, and how do you work with faculty and staff and then people at those distances?
Well, first of all, for registration, as soon as they complete the admissions process, they're automatically sent an appointment to register. And of course that's on campus, but for these distance education students, they have the option of registering either by telephone, by fax, or email. And so they can just do that from anywhere. And I think that's really exciting. They would always have the option of coming on campus, but I think probably they'll utilize the other options much more often. And of course payment is required when you register by telephone, fax, or email. They can either use their credit cards to make payment or simply put a check in the mail within a certain length of time. For advising, I'm not just, I can see that happening with the computers and the interactive, and mostly by email, I would imagine right now. Would be the biggest thing.
You brought a question to mind with your comments. if someone is at some distance off and they just want one course or two courses, maybe they're beginning to look at their introduction to college, or maybe they don't ever want to, maybe they already have a degree and they need a course. That's more simple. But if they're incoming freshmen and they want to stay on a track and 4 semesters getting an associate degree, and the advising is crucial to that, and it's crucial what institution they're transferring to, then that's still a much more of a challenge technology that they need to be with a faculty member. For example, if they're pre-med or they're pre-law, they don't get to choose very many courses they take, and they have to have a lot of courses in different categories. So what do you see in that field for technology?
Well, there I do see the faculty members working directly with the student. I see the student working directly with my office because we do the evaluations for graduation. I see us using, as I say, the email, probably the telephone a great deal. Probably will be using a lot of voicemail, but mostly I would visualize the email would be the most practical at this particular time.
Now the social scientist comes out in me, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate.
Oh, you are.
You have done such a wonderful job showing that this technology is helpful, and it's serving, as Candace said, the students. But I have a social science concern, that if this develops and expands more and more and someone gets isolated at home and they take all their courses there, how about their social skills? There's something very meaningful about arriving on a campus and attending concerts and lecture series and engaging in dialogue with lots of other people. What's your answer to that problem?
I think if I could reply, this isn't a solution for everyone. And I have just been sitting at the registration desk. We're active right now getting the spring registration. And the student that for distance education is not your 18 to 22-year-old student usually. It is your older student working, a nurse practitioner that needs to improve their skills to keep their job. It is the maybe someone who has had a job in lumber or mining for 20 years and needs to make a career move. It's a different population. I think it's like almost an other. I believe you'll always need, and rightfully so, the college experience for right out of high school, and no one that will always be there, and there will always be that.
So we're not going to wipe out these campuses around the United States?
I don't believe so. But now we have, because of society's demand for upgrading of skills, we have a huge other population that needs to go and have access to quality learning. And so I think it's an other out there is my best way.
Because without this, there are people that just simply can't come.
Right.
Yeah. Well, just for instance, this morning I was working with a student who had come down to register, but he had to go ahead and arrange his schedule so that he could provide child care for his son. And the internet classes were just ideal. That way he's able to stay at home, take care of his son, and yet go ahead and improve his skills.
And that saves tremendous amount financially, the child care costs and all of that.
Very cost effective for the student. Not to travel, daycare, time, and still hold a job.
Those traditional colleges seems in the past has always been set up from that 8 in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening. And if you really look at it, it's kind of a devil's advocate point of view. Would be, what are we asking the older adult to do? You might be working, but you're going to need to quit your job in order to come back to go to school full time in order to get that degree. This just opens, and we're hoping in the admissions office, a whole new market that really is probably out there that's working 8 to 5 or whatnot.
I can think of another thing. We have a lot of students that commute from some distance, Sandpoint, Idaho, or Kellogg, or Wallace, or even Bonners Ferry. And by having a combination of courses here on campus and such as internet courses, they may be able to arrange a schedule where they come here Tuesday and Thursday instead of 5 days a week, and then have the other 3 days at home in courses. That's another option, isn't it?
The combination, yes.
Unfortunately, we're running short on time, and I want to get into one other area with you that I find exciting at institutions around the country. Lindy Turner, who's our director of productions for this program and does 1,000 other things on campus, is highly, highly qualified. He's helped us a lot with this, and I want, Candace, you to talk a little bit about downlink and uplink. For example, I'll give you a great example. last year there was the White House Conference on Hate Crimes and Violence. And the president of this institution at the time, the interim president, was the only person from Idaho who was invited to the conference in Washington, D.C. But we were able, through the White House staff and all, to downlink, and we had our citizens in our community and the college that actually went into a room here, and we got to be at the conference.
Isn't that marvelous?
And so let's talk a little about that. You can tie up with colleges around the country or even around the world. Give us a little more information on how that works.
It really, it's overused to say the opportunities are, endless, but that truly is. We are just beginning to get into and become aware of all the different opportunities that we can connect to. Access to information is just out there. Now the problem is how to prioritize and determine what and how you're going to participate. And like you mentioned, the hate conference. What an experience that you can be in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and actually be attending the conference in Washington, D.C. of great importance. Socially, between that and what I mentioned about the New Zealand and whatnot, the connectedness of the globe and understanding and just a comprehension of how we're all really about the same thing.
There's another way of dealing with it. We were sitting here listening to the conference and not participating, but we, through Lindy Turner's assistance, we worked with the entire congressional delegation, our 2 U.S. senators and our congressman a few years ago, and there were some of both parties, and we hooked them up through that system to our auditorium. We had a large audience here. They each won in a White House representative. They all spoke to our people, but our people in turn asked those individuals questions. We had one member in the House, 2 members in the Senate, one over at the White House, and there was that interchange among them. And so
access to information and learning.
By doing that, individuals will have experience that it would be impossible to take all of us from here to Washington, D.C. for that exchange. So again, I think that's helpful. I've got the signal that we're just now out of time. On behalf of our staff, I want to thank Candace Wheeler, Scott Peterson, and Karen Streeter for what I think has been a very informative program. It's exciting about the future. All this will blend. There'll be things to work out, but certainly we are just going to, as Candace said, we're going to come to you to help you in whatever ways we can. And other colleges and universities are doing the same thing. We're working with other colleges. And I thank all of you very much for being on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, I found it exciting to bring you this topic, and I hope it was very helpful to you, and I invite you to be with us again next week at the same time. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.